All right, guys, I just wanted to jump on here and talk a little bit more about Sean Strickland and why I think he deserves a title shot, but also why the UFC is probably not going to help him on his way towards getting a title shot, because there are several reasons that we're going to talk about here. Number one, where he's placed in the rankings, which I don't think is fair. And number two, the politics of what's going to be involved of getting Sean Strickland on a press conference stage next to Israel Adesanya in a company that is currently being sponsored by Disney. That is not good for a man like Sean Strickland. Let's get right into it. First of all, I want to talk about Sean's amazing performance over the weekend. I know I spoke about this yesterday in my recap over the fight against Anus, the man with no cardio who had all the hype in the world. Sean Strickland absolutely exposed him for his pathetic 7 minutes of cardio. I don't understand what sort of contender that is, especially considering that wasn't a very high-paced fight, was it? I mean, Sean Strickland's entire style is to just stand there very closely and jab at you until the fight starts to go his way. And this huge up-and-coming prospect couldn't figure out a way to handle that. It's a bit disappointing. But now that Sean Strickland has put an end to that hype train, the question is, what are you gonna do with him? Now, I want to remind everyone where we were just a month ago when we were talking about Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis and why du Plessis deserved that shot even though he was rated number 6. We were talking about how there was no one else for Izzy to fight. Izzy wants fresh matchups, and how everyone else in the weight class isn't quite there yet. It's crazy how much changes in this sport in just a couple of months. Since that has happened, du Plessis is now going to be tied up with Robert Whittaker. And if you're a gambling person that watches MMA, which you should be putting your money on Robert Whittaker, because Robert Whittaker is absolutely going to win that fight. Which means those two are tied up, and then there's going to be 2 months before the card in Australia, and we're assuming that the UFC is going to be offering Robert Whittaker a chance to reclaim his title against Israel Adesanya. Now, I am a massive Robert Whittaker fan. I know my bias in the sport. I think Robert Whittaker won that last fight against Israel Adesanya. I want him to be a champion. So I do not want Robert Whittaker to take that fight. I want Robert Whittaker to have as much time as he needs, a proper fight camp to heal up his injuries and step into that fight. But if they are going to force Robert Whittaker to go and do that fight, which I think is the angle they're going to take, I think Sean Strickland should put his hand up to be the backup fighter for that card. I think he should fly down to Australia, make weight, get paid, get himself on the mic, and be the backup fighter. Because Robert Whittaker has health issues going into fight week. It's happened before, and there's a good chance that it'll happen again. So Strickland should put himself in that position. Now, the question of does Strickland actually deserve it, and where is Strickland placed in the rankings? Just look at the middleweight rankings, you guys. Alex Pereira shouldn't even be there anymore. Marvin Vettori needs to move down a fair bit. Paulo Costa needs to move down as well. So really the top 3 guys are Jared Cannonier, Robert Whittaker, and Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland had that fight with Jared Cannonier and arguably won it. In the fans' eyes, he arguably won it, except on the judges' scorecards, he seems to have lost it, which is very unlucky for Sean Strickland, but very, very lucky for the UFC. Because the UFC has got a big marketing problem when it comes to Sean Strickland. His fans are loud, his fans buy pay-per-views, his fans give them clicks. But Sean Strickland is not a very politically correct kind of guy. You cannot have Sean Strickland as a pay-per-view champion. You shouldn't even have Sean Strickland on pay-per-view saying the things that he's going to say. I would be shocked if there wasn't a phone call from the higher-ups at Disney down to the UFC, just like what happened during the pandemic when Dana White was saying that he wanted to go ahead and put on fights. And that fight card, I don't remember which fight card it was, but there was a fight card where the UFC was going to be the only thing in the world happening that weekend. And he got a call from the Mouse boss himself and told him to stop with that card. And I can imagine the same thing would be happening with Sean Strickland. They are going to step in here and make sure that his run to the title is halted as much as possible, which I think is a disservice to the UFC. Look, Sean Strickland is not the kind of guy that's going to beat Israel Adesanya in a cage fight at all. But he's going to bring eyes to that pay-per-view. And then what's going to happen? There's going to be this huge, satisfying, I could even picture a question mark kick coming up from Izzy and just knocking Sean Strickland out cold. Sean Strickland is not dynamic and fluid enough to dance with Israel Adesanya. So if they were actually smart, they could sell this as Sean Strickland, this loud-mouthed, right-wing villain, put him up there, put him in the cage, get all eyes on the sport, and then you have Israel Adesanya. Someone who's a very good representative for the other team. I know that you don't want to get politics too involved in this game, guys, but that's what this fight would be built around. And Israel Adesanya would win that fight. It would actually be a great win for all the people that hate Sean Strickland and want to see him get knocked out. Because when you also look at the rankings, as Sean Strickland is going to keep fighting in that top 5, Jared Cannonier couldn't finish him. Robert Whittaker doesn't really have knockout power, so Robert Whittaker would beat him up. Dricus du Plessis might be able to stand with him and might be able to beat him up. But if you're the kind of person that really wants to see Sean Strickland knocked down on his ass and knocked out cold, Israel Adesanya is probably the guy to do that, which is all the more reason why this fight should happen. It is going to be great to watch that week's press conference. It is going to be great for the Sean Strickland fans to believe and think that he can beat Israel Adesanya with that weird concrete-like jab that he has. But it's also going to be great to see the aftermath of that all and watch it all happen. And there is an opportunity right now to let that happen. I think if Sean Strickland doesn't want to be the backup fighter and we are going to go ahead with Whittaker versus Adesanya in September, we should actually rebook Sean Strickland versus Cannonier. Have it again. Let's actually sort this one out so we can get that ranking situation sorted out and we can move forward to see who Israel Adesanya's next contender is going to be. Because if there's one thing that we all know about Izzy is that he is an active fighter and he wants to stay active. So is Sean Strickland. He's an active fighter as well. And I think if Sean Strickland keeps winning, this inevitability is going to happen where they're going to meet each other and the UFC is going to have to address this problem of what do we do when we get Sean Strickland at another pay-per-view event in front of the cameras and we have to somehow put him on ESPN. How the hell are we going to manage that? I think the sooner that we do it, the sooner that Sean can get knocked out and the sooner that that problem for the UFC goes away. Plus us, the fans, get to watch that madness and the UFC gets to make a bunch of money. Who doesn't want to see that? Guys, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. What do you think is next for Sean Strickland? How do you think the UFC should handle this challenge of such a unmarketable personality when he has such a huge fan base? What are they going to do about that? And do you think the higher ups at ESPN are actually going to step in and tell Sean Strickland to keep his mouth shut during press conferences? It's a very interesting situation that we find ourselves in, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'll see you all in the next video.